Things are speeding up out there, and it's really getting tricky to keep on top of all this. So I'm doing my best to put all this stuff together and link it all to New York and Valentine's Day, with it being connected to Neptune, and Neptune being the god of the storm. Okay, so there's lots of history that is showing us this. This was all pre-planned, like actually, centuries ago. And so I want to go through that. Somebody had asked me, what's your channel about? And I was like, okay, it's astrotheology. And really what it's all about is teaching alchemy of the soul, so you learn how to free yourself from this uh, loop, this time loop that we're in, and that you can eventually retain memory and be an upgraded player in this game of life. That's really what my whole channel is about. But to understand that, you have to kind of understand the sky, the symbolism of the sky, and understand the symbolism that's coming at us, it all relating to astrology. And astrology is really about your own body, and your body is the temple. And once you know thyself, and you can uh, work with your shadow and get yourself to a middle path and stop the judgment and the fear, you can then become a free person, and your body can activate. Okay, so this is what alchemy is. It's all about our bodies. So I want to get into Neptune. I got a lot to go through, so stay with me. It's all tied to New York and the history of New York. So I do appreciate all the watchers out there. Somebody sent me this, with the Omicron being the terminology being used with it is a tsunami, and this is what I want to talk about. Neptune is the second stage of alchemy. It is the joining, the marriage of the black and white, and it's a purification that happens with water. My last video explained that how that all ties into the month of February, and that is the purging month. And this is all linking to Valentine's Day, that David Bowie had done this song, St. Valentine's Day, and he said, today's the day. And he did it in this big, huge granary in Red Hook, which is, I believe, representing Citus, the whale. Okay, and I'm going to prove you how that is actually true in the sky as well, with Chinese astrology. Okay, so I'm going to tap into some Chinese astrology today as well, but this is all exciting. It's all kind of linking together. It's the symbolism's everywhere. Someone else reminded me of a song that Sting just put out called The Rushing Waters. It's on his Bridge album. He released his album on the 19th of November, the same day as Adele released hers, and she had all the Saturn symbolism, which is the first stage of alchemy. And then her interview with Oprah was the second stage, because they were both dressed in white. She was dressed in black on the first stage. So they're all referencing that this is coming, okay? And they all released their albums on this, November 19th, because it ends up being 1119. So we're getting back to 9/11. Now the song Rushing Waters is really important, because he mentions in the lyrics Jonas and the whale. He also has a song called Waters at the Tyne, and I found some artifacts that work into Newcastle and Tyne. And then this song that he released in Japan with this album, which is Guess the Lord Must Be in New York City. Okay, it's an old song that he redid. So yeah, that's really pointing to New York City, the whale, and the water in his album. Here are the artifacts that was found in Newcastle upon Tyne. It's a Neptune. Neptune symbolism and Oceanus, which is, one was a freshwater god and the other one was a sea god, Oceanus, but I think they are tied together, like they've linked them together over time. They're saying here, if you look at the Roman gods family tree, Neptune is actually Oceanus' nephew. Neptune's father is Saturn, brother to Oceanus. Why choose two Roman gods for the same thing? Oceanus rules the sea as the head of the older dynasty, while Neptune rules as part of the younger dynasty. So there you go. It's like they're kind of the same. And like Poseidon, Neptune was also worshipped by the Romans as a god of horses. Now they're saying here, what a pleasure to hear new songs from him. You can recall Paul McCartney citing Sting's Field of Gold as the best song he himself never wrote. Okay, and that song is about, the harvest, okay? The fields of gold is the wheat, And if you want to be upgraded, you don't want to be the wheat, okay? That's not the good path to be an upgraded soul. That's just, you know, sacrificing yourself to the tree and recycling back with no memory. They're mentioning his song, Every Breath You Take, okay, because it's going to be hard to breathe if you're underwater. And then they use the word eclipsing, and you've lost that loving feeling. So when you have no love inside of you, you're going to have a hard time to breathe, okay? So this is how the esoteric language works. So Sting, who had a whole Jeopardy category named for him last spring, so they're saying it's to do with the spring, hits the Caesar Palace in Las Vegas in October. So this also ties into Caesar. Everything goes back to Caesar because, you know, he was stabbed in the back 23 times, and it was the fall of Rome, and it was known as Sic Septer Tyrannus, which means get off my neck. And then it all ties into him giving this black pearl to his girlfriend, his mistress, and the pearl really represents ascension. Okay, so in history, like the esoteric language goes throughout all of history, and it just keeps repeating itself. They use Sic Septer Tyrannus also in the shooting of Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so it's always, you know, they just repeat the same symbolism. And to me, it's like time is not linear, it's like circular, and then there's like slices, and it has to repeat. And there must be timekeepers in this realm. They must come in and, you know, put the same symbolism through, because this is how you become awakened, as you start to see the repetitive patterns. And once you see repetitive patterns in history, you start to go, what the heck are we in? This is like this realm is an illusion. So that's how they do it, so souls can find it if they choose to seek it out. If you don't want to see it, you'll never see it. So the song, I Guess the Lord Must Be in New York City, was covered by Sagittarius, of course, because it's all about astrology. And that's Manhattan, right? Manhattan's original name was Bow and Arrows, and that's Sagittarius, okay? So also the song was covered by Sinead O'Connor, and the track was used in the film La Mortadelia, which means dead, okay? U.S. title, Lady Liberty. Okay. If you understand French, that doesn't mean Lady Liberty. It means death, mortality. And this is Sting. This is my lonely mission, to wake up the world up to its fate, Sting says. Then he says, wakes up in a married woman's bed in the bells of St. Thomas, and notes, drilling, of the last days of judgment is upon us. There you go. He's telling us. Now, David Bowie said it all ties into Valentine's Day. The full moon is on February 16th, okay, 2 days after Valentine's Day. The new moon is February 1st, and that's how they activate the Chinese New Year, is all to the new moon. So the new moon is on February 1st in 2022, and that's the year of the tiger, water tiger. And the tiger itself in Chinese mythology, because there's 4 big symbols in Chinese mythology. One's the dragon, the azure dragon, one's the vermilion bird, one's the tiger, and one's the tortoise. Now the tiger is actually in the location of Aries and Cassiopeia, which I've explained before, and it's kind of like around where the hands of God are. Okay, so it's important that it's a tiger year. Okay, so because it's relating to the hands of God. So IPEC goat, they have the yin and the yang symbol before this girl goes in front of this, you know, these tanks. I showed this in my last video. It ties into the year of the tiger because she's wearing the tiger on her back. Now, what's really fascinating, just before the hand of, you know, death, which death represents ascension. Okay, I know that's a hard one to get your head around, but yeah, it does, because he's wearing the red and white, and he's wearing the Ariadne string. Gets you out of the labyrinth, and then he's celebrating the new year, right? So this is all to do with February. So they're putting February in there. Now, as he touches her back, she turns around and looks. But guess what? Who also did that? Katy Perry. She had a song called Roar, and she was wearing this silk jacket. So that girl in the iPet movie, iPet Goat movie, is Katy Perry. Now, she's also wearing 2 tigers on the front of the jacket, and one of her, like, sneak previews of her song Roar. She did a whole bunch of these little videos, okay, and there's symbolism in all of them. I'm not going to go into all of them, but she has the two tigers, right? So then she does her first performance of this at the MTV Awards, and they do it at the Brooklyn Bridge, and they have the two lions there. Now, at the end of the song, she goes, "Game over." Okay, so they're in New York City, and there she is, the eye of the tiger. She's talking about the eye of the tiger and walking into the fire. It's basically a song of ascension, and they're telling you the year. She also did this at the Super Bowl. She was riding the tiger. Okay, and then they have all this the red balloons. Okay, and then he's got red eyes, and then she's dressed up in a whole fire suit. Okay, so that's ascension. Anytime you see fire, it means the phoenix rising. Okay, out of the body. Okay, it's really Aquarius. It's that's the phoenix. If you go to the Glastonbury in England, where they have all the zodiac all around the town, the actual Chelsea well is Aquarius, and it represents the phoenix. Okay, so it's all in ancient history. Now she goes to Glastonbury and does a concert there, and she's got the all-seeing eye. It's on the backstage, and she's also got it on her chest, and she's got purple, which is ascension, and she's got little purple wings on. So they're telling you that this is all going to happen, but the New York link is really important. Now the next thing, the Cat's Eye Nebula, is the eye of the tiger. It's in the sky. It's in Draco. It's in the dragon. Now, in Oceanus was like a dragon that went around the world. He was water, but he looped the world. Okay, so I think that's how they're tying it all in with the dragon and the water and, the eye of the tiger. It's the Cat's Eye Nebula. There's also the Helix Nebula, and it looks like the cat's eye, but this one is referencing to the eye of God in pop culture. It's also called the Eye of Sauron. So I always thought that was the cat's eye, but they're very much the same, right? And also the Ring Nebula, so you get the Lord of the Ring and all that. It's all tying into the sky, okay? So the Helix Nebula is actually in Aquarius on his left leg, just in his thigh. The Helix Nebula is the green circle, that's where that is. And then in Chinese, the red circle is called the Palace Guard. And as above, so below, the Eye of God is a sacred site where the Serrano natives would go 2,000 years ago to sacred ceremonies. So it's a lot smaller than it was because they were using it to blast it open to see if they could find gold. But when you go to the Google map, the Eye of God at Baldwin Lake, we've got Alec Baldwin, okay, near the Big Bear, which is, the Big Bear in the sky is Ursa Major. She's I explained this before, the Charles wagon. She's like Odin's wagon, the Big Dipper. Okay, and you will see a big white quartz speck on the map shining bright among the brownish green hilly terrain. Okay, so this is a very sacred site. It's just in California. So anyhow, that's really fascinating because as above, so below. Somebody was shocked because after I did the whole tiger thing in my last video, this Tiger Rising movie that's coming out January 21st, came up on her YouTube, and she sent it to me, and of course it's everywhere, right? So and then she says it's all about this tiger being released from this cage, right? So it's like freeing the tiger. So she says at the end of the movie or end of the clip, ain't nobody gonna rescue you. Okay, so nobody's gonna come to rescue you. She says to the two little kids, you gotta rescue yourself, and you gotta run and be free and take that path. Okay, that's the middle path. No judgment, no hate, no fear. So we have a full moon on February 16th, 2 days after Valentine's Day, and that's the official Mars-Venus conjunction. Okay, so it's very close on the 14th. So I don't know, is it going to happen the 14th, something going to happen, or is it the 16th when the sky is aligning more? So time will tell. So here it is on Valentine's Day. We have the sun right in Aquarius, right above the Eye of God. Jupiter is on the water, right? So it's a rush of water. Now we have Neptune right in Pisces. He's in Pisces, so he's in his own house. He's in his own constellation, and who's Neptune? He's all about the metaphysical, right? He's all about your dream world, your subconscious. Okay, so now this location of the sky I circled in yellow. That's called the circlet of Pisces. Okay, so it's like a little crown, and it has mythology to that as well, and I'll get into that. But I just wanted you to see that this part where Neptune is a very important location in the sky, and I'll explain why. It is the tail of the whale, right? You have Citus there, and that has the Omicron Mira star, which is the pearl, right? Everything ties back to the pearl. So I just want to show you, this is the location just above the east cardinal, is the tail of the whale, and I showed it here. It's the cloud and rain and the thunderbolts. So that part of the sky has to do with water and storms. Okay, so Neptune is in his storm, location in his own constellation, which is Pisces, right? So it's like, ooh, okay, because he's the god of the storm. Now, the reason things are important in the sky more in other locations has to do with the grid. Okay, this is the equatorial grid, and this is how they aligned the 3 guide stars, which I explained in my last video, that goes from Cassiopeia to the top of Andromeda and along the side of the square of Pisces. Okay? I have that in the blue there. It's like that's, and if you look, okay, really closely, at the middle of the equatorial grid, there's a cross that goes to the North Pole. Okay, so everything's about the North Pole. And there's the cross. And so one of the crosses goes right to that location of the sky where Jupiter is, on the tail of the whale. And the other cross goes to the Golden Gate, which we know that's super important, where the nebula, like the big golden egg is on the Milky Way. That's in the yellow one. The green one goes to Zavijava. You guys know I talk about Zavijava all the time. That's the star on the left side of Virgo. It's fascinating, right? Because intuitively I knew all these places were really important, but now I know why. Okay, and then the red one ends up going to where Trump was born, right on the horns of Taurus, the Silver Gate, right on the hammer of Orion. And that's a very important location. I've done videos on that, how, blood moons are always there and important place in the sky. Okay, so that's why these places are so important. It has to do with the grid. And the North Pole is the center of it all. I was lucky. I was able to get this to pull up. It doesn't always. It's right on the North Pole. See, I circled it. There's the end there. That's the Polaris star. And it says here, it's the origin of all things. Okay, so that's why the North Pole is so important. And Santa Claus lives there. Okay, now the mythology of the constellation Pisces all ties into Venus. So this is why, I guess Valentine's Day ties into the Cupid, okay, because it's the mythology of Eros, represented by Aphrodite, and her son, Eros, which is Cupid. And how this came to be is related to the battle between Zeus and the typhoon. Okay, so the typhoon, represents, the storm. Okay, so he was a terrible monster created by Gaia after Zeus had defeated his father, Saturn, Cronus, in the battle for control of Mount Olympus. And after Zeus won the battle, he banished Kronos and the Titans, who had supported Kronos and who were the children of Gaia, to Tartarus, which is in the inner earth, but it's the bad part. Okay, it's not the Lucian, Elysium is the good part. Okay, so of the inner world. So in revenge, Gaia created Typhus, who was said to be the most powerful and evil monster there ever was. He was covered in snakes and had wings that blocked the light of the sun. He was so big that his head touched the stars. He breathed fire like a dragon and spat rocks from his mouth. So Typhus attacked Mount Olympus in an effort to restore Cronus to the throne. And all of the gods and goddesses were so frightened that they fled to the woods of Egypt and disguised themselves as animals. Zeus was the only one who remained behind to do the battle, and he eventually conquered Typhon. One day, as Aphrodite and Eros, which is Cupid, were walking in the woods, they heard the monster crashing through the trees in their direction. Aphrodite took Eros' hand and they ran to the shore of the sea, where they turned themselves into fish and swam safely away. They tied themselves together with a cord so that they would not lose each other. So this is the constellation Pisces. There's two fish and the cord ties them together. And after Zeus regained control of Mount Olympus, he immortalized their great escape in the constellation Pisces, which he put under the protection of Poseidon, Neptune. So Neptune rules Pisces for this reason, okay? So he's the god of the sea. The brightest star in the constellation represents the knot, or that ties the bond, or binds them. So in some variations of the story, Poseidon sent 2 dolphins to save them. And these are the fish that represent this constellation. So they're originally 2 dolphins. So Typhus was eventually exiled to Sicily, where Zeus dropped the great volcano Mount Etna on him. Okay, so Mount Etna is, erupting recently, right? And it was said that the rumbling, smoke, and eruptions of the mountain still come from this terrible monster. So the volcano is the monster, and it ties into Valentine's Day. This is why it's like, oh my God, it's like layers and layers of confirmation that Valentine's Day is a very, very important holiday. First of all, it's red and white, which is the ribedo, the last stage of alchemy. Then, it ties into Captain Cook's death. He died on February 14th. It ties into David Bowie's song, St. Valentine's Day, and The Whale, because it ties in, of course it does, because it's a location in the sky. It has to do with Neptune. So Iman, David Bowie's wife, did this Vogue, house tour, and she was showing all the artifacts in her house. And one of the things she really pointed out was this book that they both loved and fell in love with, and it has to do with the dolphin and a grave. Okay, so you go to your grave, you ride the dolphins, and you go to the underworld, through the water, because you have to be purified. It's all a symbolism. But they're going to try to do it on the exterior, which is going to traumatize people. But it's really to do with understanding that the moon and Neptune, it's all metaphysical. It all happens through your feet, connecting to Earth. And it has to do with spirituality, because Pisces constellation is spirituality. It has to do with water, because you need to remember, because Neptune ties to the moon. Okay, everything with Neptune has to relate to the moon, which the moon holds memory. It's water. Okay, so it represents memory. Now, Ceres is the goddess of basically the harvest. And on Valentine's Day, she's right on the Pleiades, which is really important, right? Because the Ein Soft, the left eye of Taurus is the Ein Soft, so she's like, this is a really important location. It's where the labyrinth is. It's, Taurus, the toroidal, it's all very important part of the sky. And then Uranus, of course, is in Aries. And in Chinese astrology, Aries, the head of Aries, is called Bond. Okay, so James Bond, I guarantee you, is because it's the I am. Okay, and that's why they named him James Bond. Now, Ceres is also depicted with scales, as she is seen as the inventor of justice. And she has that spear in that Omicron movie, that Spanish Omicron movie. There was the scene was all with the goddess and the spear. So I was thinking it was, justice. Like I thought it was that, but it's really also Ceres. She has like a spear in her hand. I love this picture of Neptune. Okay, because one horse is supposed to be good and one's supposed to be bad. So they got the black and white. So this is an alchemic picture. Okay, he's in his shell, that's his chariot, and he's dressed in red, and then there's the red and white horse, It's just, so beautiful. Neptune marries Amphitrite. Can't see it, it's just going to come up soon, but that's what this fresco is, the two of them. Okay, so that's his wife. It's coming up now. Amphitrite. Now she is actually on Entrees, a really important star. It's the fixed star in Scorpio. It's the heart of Scorpio. Now she's on Entrees, which is representing death, right? In a way, it's the kiss of death, that's what that star is. It's the Archangel Uriel. Now it's one of the four fixed stars, so it's one of the archangels, right? So it's also the kiss of death because it rules, Scorpio rules the house, the 8th house, which is the beginning of transformation, also the house of death and energies and transforming yourself. And it's really the doorway. It's the doorway. It's ruled by Pluto. It's the doorway to the underworld, right? Everything hidden, everything esoteric is in Scorpio Ophiuchus. It's all the hidden stuff. The worshipping of Neptune started in 25 BC, and it has to do with the Campus Martinis, so it has to do with Mars. This location was on the floodplain of the river Tiber, so that's to do with the wolf. I don't know if you guys remember the whole timber song that the Kennedy grandchildren did, and that's all referencing this river. Okay, so flooded regularly at high tide. So at high tide, how apt for a sea god. Okay, so there was a temple and it flooded at high tide. The timing of Neptunalia coincided with the moon being the farthest from the earth when its influences on the waves and tides were at the weakest. However, as there is no evidence for steps leading to the entrance, in probability the temple was the only access by the boat, very fitting for the worship of a sea god. So they're kind of saying, so there's no steps there, so they needed to have the water at the high tide, right? So they're kind of going, oh no, it's related to the moon. Neptune's related to the moon, but it's low tide. I really don't think so because he's the storm god, and the moon pulls on the tides for high tide as well. And you know how February all ties into the beginning of spring, right? It's the rites of spring, because that's all with Dionysus. It's all to do with the rites of spring, and that's in the Fantasia movie. So when the tides are high because of a full moon, which is happening on February 16th, 2 days after Valentine's Day, this is called a spring tide. Okay, so and then when it's on the quarter phases, it's called the neap tide, and then when it's at its highest flood, it's called the flood, or high tide, or ebb tide, and low tide. The Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia is where it falls the most. It goes up and down the most. Okay, so almost 50 feet. So I just thought it was interesting that the full moon ties into a spring tide, and we know this is all about the rites of spring. And February is actually the month of spring. Believe it or not, that's how it was in ancient culture. It was known as the month of spring. So here it's all linking Neptune to a cult of the Mithra cult with Mars and Apollo. Okay, so Apollo ties to the sun. That's the sun. Okay, and so is Mithras. He's the sun as well. So it's really Mars and Neptune, right? So Mars and Neptune, that's really important to understand, that that's what links to the Neptunalia enigma. Okay, it's a bit of an enigma, but these three gods are all part of it, tying to Neptune. Now, Mars rules Scorpio, the house of death, okay, but he also rules Aries, the I am, the bond, right, where the bond is in Chinese astrology. So yeah, it's the crown chakra. The crown chakra is your first house. Okay, that's the house of self, and that's ruled by Aries. If you understand the wheel, okay. Now Pisces is your 2 feet. Now we know they're 2 dolphins. That's the 12th house, and that's your feet. That's how you know how the constellations rule your body. They have to rule that way. They're not going to cut the wheel in half. And in all ancient texts, it always says Aries is your crown. Okay, it's not Aquarius, it's Aries. And that's because Aries rules the house of self, your head. It's your crown. Now, it's a blue planet, right? So he bears the name the big blue. He also has moon and a sun named Triton. Okay, so Triton is his sun, and it all has to do with the altar. Okay, so Neptunalia has to do with the altar. Originally, Neptune was the god of spring, so there we go, he's tied to spring, and fresh water, not seawater. But in 399 BC, he was adopted by the Roman people as the god of sea and served much of the same purpose as the earlier god, which was Oceanus. The Titan Oceanus had been the god of sea and rivers, notably the enormous river that was thought to surround the world and from which all rivers and streams were believed to flow. And he's carrying a trident, which is his symbol, right? The three-pronged fork. Now, Triton, the half man, half lobster, so he's half a lobster, half man. So you could say, you know, he's like, it looks like a crab, right? Lobster, crab, it's a shellfish. So one of Neptune's moons is called Triton, which is the man, half shellfish. And on Valentine's Day, we have the moon on the crab, you know, which is Cancer, the only constellation that rules the moon. It's right beside Tegmen, which is, it's really weird, that's where I was born. And this is the house of home, house of memory, ancestral memory, you know, where all the pain and suffering that we carry in our DNA has to come and be healed, right? It's the house of home. And this is how you gain your security, is by, you know, remembering your past, remembering your history, okay, and then cleansing it and purifying it. So anyhow, the moon refers to memory, and it happens to be on a shellfish, you know, in its home house on February 14th. So it's really, really important because this is all tying to Neptune being on his location at the tail of the whale, which is, you know, the storm, and he's also, Citus is actually Odin's Sleipnir horse. It takes you to the underworld, and then the moon, you know, is tying to his son Triton. Here they're saying the name Poseidon, which is actually Neptune, means the husband of the earth, or the lord of the earth, which, you know, everybody thinks, you know, traditionally he was the son of Cronus. Saturn, you know, is the lord of the earth. But, you know, I guess in a way Saturn he's tied to earth. He's like, Capricorn is earth, but Capricorn is half a sea animal, okay? He's almost like a hippocampus, half horse, half, you know, sea tail. So, you know, it's kind of, there's a relationship there to the water, and this planet is more water than it is earth, right? It should be called water, this planet, not earth. And I found this old artifact. It's called the Achilles shield. And they have the zodiac in the middle, but in the center, I don't know if you can see it, there's 4 horses. That, I'm pretty sure, is Neptune, you know, with his horses. So it's interesting. But maybe it's Apollo, the sun, you know, but that's all ties to the Neptunalia festival anyhow. But Poseidon, he fathered many horses, right? He's the god of the horses. Best known of which was the winged horse Pegasus, and that his mother was Medusa. That's the head with all the snakes, and you know, if you look at her, you turn to stone. And Pegasus, I've done, you know, videos about him. That horse is not really the nice horse because he dumps off his rider. He goes to Mount Olympus and the rider never makes it. The man, the immortal person, doesn't make it. Okay, so, you know, he's got a sneaky side to him. This just blew me away. Merope and Orion. Okay, so Orion marries Merope, or he falls in love with her. So, and she's in the Pleiades, Merope. Okay, she's one of the 7 sisters. So under the Pleiades, I think of the 7 sisters who fled. The hunter Orion, I was taken in their steed. Okay, so the horse, son of Poseidon. So Orion is the son of Poseidon. I never knew that. You walk the waves while I fainted at your feet. So it ties to the feet. Hand in hand we comb the sands, and I weave the salt white fringes of the sea. So I was like, oh my God, Orion is Neptune's son. So they're saying it here. Orion was a giant man with the ability to walk on water. Okay, so he could walk on water, Orion. He was a mighty hunter with great beauty. There was one solid account of his life, however. There are many accounts of his life and death, Orion. He was described first as a Boeotian by birth and as the son of Poseidon and Eurydice, daughter of the king of Crete. So there he is. He's falling in love with Merope. Okay, so there you go. He's the son of Poseidon. He's son of Neptune. They have a coin, and it looks exactly like Orion, right? He has his hand up in the air. That's the hand of God in Orion, and he's holding the pelts, which Orion has. Okay, that's Orion. It's friggin' the son of Neptune. So Apollo's trick, the version of Orion's death has it that he fell in love with Artemis, who's the moon goddess, the goddess which he was very much fond of, the twin of Apollo, which is the sun, so sun and moon, and he falls in love with her, the moon. He was quite against the love affair of Apollo. He didn't like it, okay? And one day, while swimming in the lake with his head barely visible, Apollo went to his sister and challenged her skills to see if she could shoot, okay, with her bow and arrow. So we got the bow and arrow from Artemis now. And to prove him wrong, he told her to shoot at Orion's head, whom Artemis barely recognized, as there was a considerable distance between them. And Artemis hit the target, unknowingly killing her lover. Okay, so the moon, the sun got the moon to kill the mortal man. Okay, so there you go. It's like, whoa. Now here they're saying, this is weird, it ends up tying into urine. You guys know I've always talked about urine and how I believe that's the golden showers, okay? So here I found something about it. He says he has the ability of running over the waves as it is on land, so that is Orion. He can walk on water. Then it's saying that he was on the island of Chios, which Chios is the Greek letter X, okay, so who asked from Jove, Zeus, and Mercury, Hermes, when that he might have a child. To gain his request more readily, he sacrificed an ox and put it before them for what he'd done for this. Jove and Mercury asked him to remove the hide from the ox. So that hide is now, removed. Maybe that's the hide. They always have it like a lion's hide, but maybe it's an ox hide on his arm in Orion. And then they urinated on the hide. Okay, and then they buried the hide in the ground. And from this later on, a child was born called Urine, appearing though in the account and the charms of the affability, he came to be called Orion. So Orion is Neptune's son, and he's being created by Zeus and Mercury peeing on him. Okay, so I'm just like, what the heck is that? So the Icelandic word is the prefix for every vandal, translated as water or gloss, might lead to a much friendlier, than to name it for Orion. So it's more like, water got poured on him. So maybe it's water, but, I don't know, guys. The urine thing is like, I'm telling you, it activates phosphorus. Urine is phosphorus, it activates DNA. Okay, so there's something to do with phosphorus because that's the bringer of the light. Okay, so I really do think we're harvested for our urine. I really do think the people that don't make the jump are going to be hooked up to tubes and they're going to be harvested for urine. I really do believe that. It's in the Ascending Jupiter movie, and it keeps, the symbology keeps coming at us, showing us it's all tied to urine. Okay, so because Neptune's wife is on entrees, I want to go into entrees a little bit. It's also tied to the goddess Serket. Okay, this is old Babylonian, knew her as Gaba Gurtab, the breast of Scorpio. So yeah, so she's the goddess Serket. I love it when they tie it to pop culture. So the Call of Duty, the Black Ops 4, Serket is alluded to the Chaos branch of the storyline, which is heavily mythology driven. Okay, so Serket is mentioned in the map of the 4, which takes place in the Roman Colosseum, where she presents the character with a scorpion that can be used to extract the sap of a tree in the Danu temple. So you are part of the tree. If you don't ascend, you become the tree. Okay, so they're pulling the sap out of the tree in the Danu, which is the tribe of Dan, almost like, right? So temple to the poison, so that the Danu temple to then poison the mystery box of weapons and guarantee the receipt of the map's wonder weapon. The wonder weapon takes the form of a chained scorpion that shoots the bolts of light to the trap and suspends the zombies. It is known as the Death of Orion initially, but can be upgraded to the more powerful Serket's kiss, or it's the kiss of death. Okay, so that's where the kiss of death comes from. It's from Serket. And the Death of Orion, there's other mythology that he doesn't get killed by the arrow from his lover, that he actually gets killed by a scorpion. Okay, so the fact that Neptune's wife is there, right on that star, is like, pretty intense on February. They're saying here that Triton really is represented as a merman. So he's basically Aquaman. And he has like a snake tail, like, so that's why I guess, it represents Oceanus, where he wraps around the world. So it's like it's like a dragon wrapping around the world. And they're saying here he likes to hold a Pluto. So a Pluto is the chubby, male child, which is really Cupid, or a sacred cherub. So it has to do with Valentine's Day. And here he is looking like the merman. Now, this all ties into supposedly the, wonderful location in Rome that the Trump family, it's their first, spot that they like to tour when they're on vacation, is the Trevi Fountain. So there's some interesting recent history about the Trevi Fountain. Now, the fountain features Neptune, god of the sea, on a shell-shaped chariot pulled by 2 horses, each being guided by Triton. Okay, so one horse is calm while the other is unruly, representing the different moods of the sea. Yeah, it's the black and white. It's the, yin and yang. The fountain dates back to 19 BC. They're talking about the 3 roads, a conjunction, which all ties into Hecate with the crossroads, but, August 13th. But these 3 streets are called the Tri-V. Now, V does not mean street in French. It means life. Okay, so it's the 3 lives. And I really believe it's future, past, and present. It's the Trinity. The white stone fountain has been black and red. Okay, so what's happening? There was a movie there as well. In 1996, the fountain was turned off and draped in black crepe in honor of actor Marcello Mastroianni after his death. Mastroianni starred in La Dolce Vita, the movie which most famous scene was filmed in the Trevi Fountain, making the fountain more famous than ever. So she jumps into the fountain and he follows her. Supposedly he was drunk because it was so friggin' cold. But anyhow, the whole thing is it's supposed to be the most important history in film history was this movie. So they made it black, it's always white, but then there was a vandal who dumped a liquid substance in the fountain and turned it red. So there it is, all red. So they've done the 3 stages of alchemy. The Italian news media identified him as Graziano Cecchina, a 54-year-old artist. So Pavel, though, telephoned him. If it had been me, wink, wink, he told her. Well, who winks? It's Odin and Santa Claus, right? All tied to the North Pole. I'd say that this has been a media savvy operation in the face of a very gray society. Oh, right, we are gray. You know, you gotta become red. You gotta become the red and white. Rubetto, the last stage. Jumping time. It means rubetto means jumping time. Jumping out of this illusion. So then, on November 3rd, which is Election Day, this all ties to Osiris Festival, in 2015, Fendi, the famous, fashion Mongol, he celebrated 90 years with his large fashion show at the Trevi Fountain. He invested I think it was like $2 million to fix this fountain up, and then they were all walking on water. Okay, so that's what the stage was. They were walking across the water. It was like a clear plastic stage. So they're using the Triton symbolism with Neptune way back in the 1700s when the founding of the United States, because they have the Union flag here. They have the Admiralty flag, and then they have the British, I think it's the British Standard. Okay, so it's all to do with the law of the sea, the Holy See, right? Because it's to do with the Navy, the waters, and this is all to do, esoterically, it's to do with memory and storms and everything like this, but it's really to do with, I believe, Atlantis even. It's like it all goes back to who are we? Where did we come from? So they have an Omicron Island. It's in the southeast of Omega Island. I told you Omicron was originally Omega. So they have this all in the Antarctica, right? And it's called the Palmer Archipelagos. So there's a string of mountains that are named Palmer. So I wanted to go, okay, why did they name them? Why was it named Palmer? Who is he? So he was a seal hunter, but he had a sloop called Hero. So they always tie it into, you have to be the hero. You have to be Orion, really. It's like you're the mortal man that, or Hercules, that you have to fight. So he was an old-time sailor of the sea. Okay, written by John Spears. I bet you didn't know that he tied to Moby Dick. Okay, I was blown away when I saw this. Okay, so he did a voyage from Boston to Hong Kong, and it took 111 days. And that's important, 111. So Trinity. Captain Palmer purchased the Cap Lauper House in 1836 in Stonington, Kentucky. The Lauper family was primarily Wales out of East Hampton, Long Island. Captain Jacob Lauper had 4 sons who brought whaling to Nantucket, Massachusetts, and Delaware Bay, southern New Jersey, and Stonington, Connecticut. The composite character of Ismail in Moby Dick is based on the events in the life of one of his children, who had the only survivor of the 1835 sinking of Japan, in which all were lost but the young James Lauper, who floated upon a coffin for a week. How's that for ascension? In the Captain Lauper House Library, Captain Palmer found many of the maps, including 2 of the coastlines of Antarctica made by the Laupers while working with the Dutch East Indian Company. The Lauper family invented all found, which meant that the berth and food were not deducted from sailors' pay, ensuring eager crews to Captain James Lauper. Escaping slaves likewise signed on, as each sailor was paid the same rate. Okay, so this all ties to the African Americans. With their last name as Lauper, can trace the lineage back to this time, taking their last name from the Dutch Lauper family. Between 1852 and 1854, Captain Lauper built the home in Stonington, which is today known as Captain Nathaniel B. Palmer House. The house is a transitional style combination elements of Greek revival and Victorian. So there you go. In Hero Bay. It's because of his boat called the Hero. So there, and it ties into Mercury here. Also named Palmer Sloop Hero Rubies, an escarpment which is discovered in the south hemisphere on the planet Mercury. Okay, and then there's a postal stamp named after him too. So Lauper, Captain James Lauper's son, ties to, that's what created the whole Moby Dick story. It's all to do with the whale, right? Again, it's all to do with the whale, Moby Dick. The whale's eye, right? The walleye. Yeah, it's a Mobius strip. The Mobius eye is called a walleye, a whale eye. Okay, so that's why how I found all the Mobius strip stuff. You got to watch my Mobius strip videos. It tells you how to ascend. Okay, call me Ishmael, because Ishmael in the Moby Dick story ends up floating. You know, he doesn't die by the whale. Okay, he gets freed because he goes on the coffin, basically, and floats away, just like this Lauper child did. So Ishmael means an outcast, whose hand is against every man's hand against him in Genesis. Okay, so I don't think it's bad, it's like he saved himself. So is he bad because he, abandoned ship and went the other way? Is that bad? Or is, who's the God of this realm? Does he want you locked here, or does he want you to become free? Ishmael travels in December from Manhattan Island to New Bedford, Massachusetts, and plans to sign up for the whaling voyage. Okay, so it's all tied to Nantucket, and so it's the Judgment Day. So Nantucket whaler, the concealed story of the judgment of God is revealed. Okay, so it's all to do with the judgment of God and the whale. Okay, this is how the whole story goes. So, on Valentine's Day song, David Bowie did it in the Red Hook granary. Well, when I was looking into Chinese astrology, that Citus was called the granary. So David Bowie does this song in the granary that looks like a big giant whale, and the Citus constellation in Chinese astrology is called the granary, the celestial granary. Okay, so see how they're using Chinese astrology for the symbolism. Now, one of David Bowie's best friends and co-workers, his name is Moby. Now, I did a whole thing with Elvis Presley. One of his performances, he did reference to Moby Dick, right? And the movie that they made about him was, the director was saying that it's very linked to the Moby Dick story. So they all know. So I'm going to end this video here because I still have a lot more to talk about, and how this all ties into a sacrifice that was done in the Royal Navy. And this all ties into Valentine's Day and a movie that was created that links this sacrifice that they did in the Royal Navy to Valentine's Day. And it's really fascinating, but it's a lot to get into, and this video is already long enough, so I'm going to do a part 2. So anyhow, this is getting crazy, but Valentine's Day is looking like a very, very, very important day this year.